There's a strange paradox at the heart of our age. Never before have we been so awake to the world, and never before have we been so deeply asleep within it. We wake to alarms, not to the morning. We scroll before we stretch. We touch glowing glass before we touch our own breath, and yet we say we are informed, connected, alive. Imagine a city at night seen from above, millions of lights flickering, pulsing, signaling life. Now imagine that inside each lit window, someone is not really there. Their body is present, their eyes open, but their attention is elsewhere. This is not science fiction. This is Tuesday. The mind today is rarely bored, yet it is profoundly restless, rarely alone, yet deeply lonely, constantly stimulated, yet oddly numb. And so the question quietly rises, often late at night or in the shower or between one notification and the next. Am I actually here? Awakening does not begin with clarity. It begins with discomfort, with the subtle ache of realizing that something essential is being missed, like attending a concert and suddenly noticing you've been watching the entire performance through your phone screen. The music was there, you were there, but you weren't with it. Psychology tells us that the brain adapts to environments, and the environment we live in now is engineered for interruption. Every buzz fractures attention. Every feed fragments time. Slowly, subtly, the mind learns to live in pieces, not broken, divided. Yet beneath this fragmentation, something watches. Something notices the fatigue after endless consumption. Something senses the quiet hunger that no amount of content can satisfy. That noticing is not the problem, it is the beginning. To lie awake does not mean to escape the world or reject technology or retreat to a mountain cave. It means to be conscious within the noise, to hear the hum without becoming it, to stand in the marketplace and still know your own name. The ancient sages spoke of awakening as remembrance, not learning something new, but recalling something forgotten. And perhaps what we have forgotten is not wisdom, but presence. The simple, radical act of being where we are. The distracted world does not imprison us by force. It seduces us by offering relief from ourselves, from silence, from feeling. And so we must ask gently, honestly, what are we avoiding when we stay busy? What truth waits patiently beneath the noise? Awakening begins the moment we stop asking how to optimize life and start asking how to inhabit it. If there is a currency more valuable than money in the modern world, it is attention. Whatever holds your attention holds your life, not metaphorically, literally, your sense of time, your emotional landscape, your identity, all shaped by where awareness rests. Psychology once focused on behavior, then thought, then emotion. Now it circles back to something simpler and deeper. Attention as the root. We become what we repeatedly attend to. Feed the mind urgency, and life feels rushed. Feed it outrage, and the world looks hostile. Feed it comparison, and the self shrinks. Distraction is not a personal weakness. It is an ecosystem. Platforms are not designed to inform you, but to keep you, not to nourish attention, but to harvest it. And the cost is subtle, a thinning of presence, a shortening of patience, a life lived in constant partial awareness. Have you noticed how time behaves when you are distracted? Hours vanish without memory. Days blur. Weeks collapse into a vague sense of busy. Compare this to a single moment of deep presence, a conversation where you forget yourself, a walk where the air feels intimate, a silence that feels full. Time slows, life thickens. This is not poetry alone. It is neurology. Attention regulates perception. Perception shapes meaning. Meaning shapes the self. When attention is scattered, the self feels unstable, anxious, always catching up. And so, we try to control the chaos by planning more, consuming more, thinking faster. But control here is a mirage. The more urgently we grasp, the more fragmented we feel. Like trying to calm a shaken glass of water by shaking it harder. Living awake asks for something counterintuitive, not more effort, but more allowance. Not constant engagement, but selective presence, to choose again and again. What deserves the intimacy of your attention? This is not withdrawal from life. It is discernment. Just as the body cannot digest endlessly without illness, the mind cannot consume endlessly without fatigue. Awareness needs space to breathe. The sages did not warn us against desire itself, but against unconscious desire, the kind that pulls us without permission. To live awake is not to eliminate wanting, but to see it clearly, to notice the impulse before obeying it, to feel the reach of the hand before it grabs. Attention, reclaimed gently, becomes a sacred act, not dramatic, not loud, just quietly revolutionary. There is, within each of us, a curious division. One part reacts, scrolls, clicks, worries, compares. This self is quick, restless, endlessly narrating. It lives in the next moment, the next message, the next outcome. And then there is another presence, quieter, often ignored. The one that notices the scrolling, the one aware of the worry, the one that hears the narration without being lost in it. This is not a mystical idea. It is a psychological fact. Awareness can observe thought. Most suffering arises not from thought itself, but from mistaking thought for the whole of who we are. The distracted world strengthens the reactive self. It trains us to respond before we reflect, to feel before we understand, to speak before we listen. The witnessing self, meanwhile, waits patiently. It cannot be optimized. It cannot be rushed. It can only be entered by slowing down. When you pause, truly pause, between stimulus and response, something extraordinary happens. You discover choice, not forced choice, but spacious choice. The kind that allows a breath before a word, a silence before a decision. This witnessing self does not judge the reactive one. It does not demand perfection. It simply sees, and in seeing, loosens the knot. Fear diminishes when it is watched. Desire softens when it is understood. Even distraction loses some of its grip when it is noticed without condemnation. The paradox is this: the self we try so hard to improve is not the self that awakens. Awakening happens when improvement relaxes into understanding, when striving gives way to curiosity. To live awake is not to silence the mind, but to befriend it, to let thoughts arise like weather, without needing to chase every cloud, to recognize that you are the sky, not the storm. In a world that constantly asks for your reaction, choosing awareness is a quiet defiance, a return to something ancient, intimate, whole. And once you taste that wholeness, even briefly, the noise no longer feels quite so convincing. The modern mind is trained to believe that urgency is synonymous with importance. Everything feels immediate. Everything demands response. Emails arrive marked high priority. News breaks every hour. Opinions race faster than understanding. And beneath it all hums a low-grade anxiety, the sense that if we don't stay alert, we'll fall behind, miss out, lose control. But control is a strange illusion. The more tightly we grip life, the more tense it becomes. Psychology shows us that anxiety is not born from uncertainty itself, but from our resistance to it. We want guarantees in a world that offers none. And so we distract ourselves, not because we are lazy, but because distraction numbs the ache of not knowing. Notice how distraction often arrives dressed as productivity. We keep moving so we don't have to feel. We keep planning so we don't have to trust. We keep refreshing so we don't have to sit with the unanswered questions of our own lives. Yet life has never moved at the speed of our devices. Bodies still heal slowly. Grief still unfolds in its own time. Love still deepens through presence, not efficiency. No amount of urgency can make a season ripen faster. Living awake invites us into a different relationship with time, not time as an enemy to conquer, but time as a rhythm to listen to. The breath teaches this naturally. It cannot be rushed without consequence. Neither can the heart. When we slow down enough to feel the body, anxiety begins to lose its authority. The nervous system remembers an older truth, that safety is not found in constant vigilance, but in grounded presence. This does not mean becoming passive. It means acting from clarity rather than compulsion, responding rather than reacting, letting intelligence emerge from stillness instead of panic. The illusion of urgency keeps us distracted. The courage to pause sets us free, and in that pause, something unexpected appears. A quiet trust that life does not need to be forced to be lived. Distraction often masquerades as protection. It shields us from discomfort, from heartbreak, from vulnerability. If we stay busy, we don't have to feel the loneliness. If we stay entertained, we don't have to touch the grief. If we stay distracted, we don't have to risk being seen. But the same walls that keep pain out also keep love out. Love, whether for another, for life, or for oneself, requires presence. It asks us to stay, to feel what arises without fleeing, to listen without preparing an escape. And this is frightening, because to be present is to be exposed. The distracted mind avoids intimacy not because it doesn't want connection, but because connection dissolves control. To truly meet another is to step into uncertainty. To love is to risk loss. To feel deeply is to accept impermanence. The sages understood this well. They did not seek stillness to escape pain, but to meet life fully. Stillness is not numbness. It is sensitivity without overwhelm. A spaciousness that allows joy and sorrow to move freely, like weather through an open window. When we stop running from our inner lives, emotions soften, not because they disappear, but because they are no longer resisted. Fear becomes information. Sadness becomes tenderness. Even anger, when met with awareness, reveals a longing beneath it. Living awake means allowing life to touch you. Not just the pleasant parts, all of it. The ache, the beauty, the uncertainty, the fleetingness. In a distracted world, presence is an act of love. Toward others, yes, but first toward yourself. And what you may discover is that the depth you were seeking an endless stimulation was always waiting in stillness. To live awake is not to withdraw from the world, but to meet it differently, slower, softer, more honestly. It is a gentle rebellion, not against technology or culture, but against unconsciousness. Awakening does not announce itself with fireworks. It arrives quietly, in moments that seem ordinary. Washing your hands and actually feeling the water, listening without interrupting, sitting without reaching for something else. Over time, these moments begin to weave together. Life feels less like a problem to solve and more like a mystery to participate in. You stop asking, "How do I control this?" and start wondering, "How do I relate to this?" The distracted world will not disappear. Notifications will continue. Noise will persist. But something within you changes. You are no longer pulled so easily. You return to yourself more quickly. This is not perfection. You will forget. You will scroll. You will rush. Awakening is not a permanent state. It is a practice of remembering. Again and again, the sages smiled at this. They knew the mind would wander. They knew awakening would come and go like breath. The freedom was not in holding onto awareness, but in returning without judgment. And so the invitation is simple, though not easy. Pause. Feel. Listen. Let the moment be enough. In doing so, you may discover that life, when fully met, is not asking you to be faster, louder, or more distracted. It is asking you to be here,